Topic is the model of the business cycle. This definitely is something that is economic heavy. I will be using these two models down here. Economics is definitely something difficult to understand, very abstract. So you're going to have to kind of focus on that and access that part of your brain. Here I have the depression causes. They will be addressed individually in the screencast on depression causes. For the most part, I just want to kind of go through these models. So here we have the business cycle. Notice how it's like a perfect wave, and this is what it would look like in the United States historically. It's never a perfect wave. It's very chaotic, big booms and big drops, and what's going on here determines what's going on here. So keep that in mind. So let's take a look first at this one. World War I, we see a boom because of all of the World War I jobs that were created. So that would be like business production forcing this one up with an arrow because you need gas masks, you need bullets, you need tanks, which then is going to create and boom in wages. So then wages go up. That then will influence Americans to spend, save, invest. So during World War I, we're here, we're at B. And that's kind of what's going on here. Notice there's a drop, and this is a result of the World War I jobs being lost. So at that point, we're at D here. So I do have a section that kind of explains what's going on. So at point A, which is actually E and A, they're the same. It's when there's either a boom or a bust, a high or a low, and you're waiting for government to do something. It's the response. Depending on what government does, it will either go up or down. So we could be here, and then government does something that fails and it goes down, or something happens and it booms. But at point B, when we're moving upward, there's hiring and there's producing. We're at point D, that's when we're dropping. And C is the peak surplus. So I do have a couple of scenarios to think about here. Notice in this image, I have arrows that are here. And I kind of already explained some of these things. Like, anything can force business production, to go up. Sometimes it's a boom in the economy, some new invention, it varies and it can go either up or down. But where you are here will determine where you are on this particular graph. So let's look at a couple of scenarios. Where would the airline industry be at its peak and why? So now we're looking at the peak of the airline industry. And the question here is why and where would you be? First off, let's just say we would be here at AEA because this is a new industry. It's going to create a lot of jobs. We're going to have flight attendants. We're going to have material that's going to be needed to build the planes. Think about fabric for seats. Think about metal. Think about aluminum. Think about fuel. That's going to create a bunch of new jobs. And so this section, it can be anything. It could be a new invention. It could be a government intervention. So what's happening here is the airline industry is at its peak. That's right here. There's a lot of hiring. There's a lot of firing. So let's take the 2020 COVID crisis. People were panicking with regard to travel. So let's say we're here in the economy. COVID strikes. The economy starts, the airline industry starts to go down because less people are flying. And so that would be an example of it not being a perfect cycle. It's just that it's moving down. And then as people start to feel comfortable flying, we'll see it start to move up. And then it would be at the B section here. 9/11. So 9/11 is another example here. We have the economy, the event that moves the cycle either up or down. This case is 9/11. So when 9/11 occurred, many Americans just stayed home. So the economy just starts to drop. It was so bad that the Bush administration actually delivered a speech and was telling Americans, go out, take your family to a restaurant. You're safe, you're secure. He knew that if Americans weren't doing anything, because all they were doing was watching the news and terrified if there was going to be another attack, that this arrow would go down because Americans were no longer spending. And if the arrow went down, business production's arrow would then go down, which then would lead to cutbacks in wages. So we could do the same thing with COVID in 2020. Americans were just staying home. They were doing none of this spending, saving, and investing, and then that forced business production to go down, and then wages went down, and before you know it, you were in a collapse of the economy, and you start to see the economy moving downward. I don't have any visuals on this. I'm not trying to include any, it's just looking at these models. What other inventions would count? So think about a couple of inventions. I'll give you 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Two that I've come up with: internet and the car. Think about the Model T Ford. So here's the economy in the 1920s, which, by the way, I should have mentioned that here, the 20s economy recovers. You know, all of those World War I jobs that were lost, notice how they do recover. And the recovery is caused by credit and the car. Why? Because, you know, the economy's starting to go down. Let's see, here's before World War One. Well, there's a war going on. We need a lot of jobs. World War One goods. We no longer need those World War War items. Let's start firing people. Let's cut back. We don't need tanks. We don't need planes. We don't need metal. And then before you know it, the economy is starting to head downward. However, Henry Ford, the Model T Ford, so many of those vehicles are being produced. They're being sold. We need a lot of metal. We need a lot of fuel. So the economy starts to move up, which means we get back at B. So notice EA. It could be anything. You know, it could be the dot-com boom in the 1990s, the birth of the internet. And the internet really starts to create a lot of jobs in different industries, and that's going to create a boom. In our simulation during the 20s, we have the easy access to credit. So where would you be? Right here at B. Keep in mind, students in the class are only able to buy. Why? Because those students have access to credit. So the credit is really the thing that's fueling, which, by the way, credit is a new invention that puts us right here and gets the economy moving upward. Start of COVID, I've already addressed this one. COVID stimulus. Okay, so early on during the COVID crisis, the Trump administration, for people that were unemployed, they were getting an additional $1,200 in unemployment benefits. His hope there was that if people aren't working and they're unemployed, let's say you're getting $400 in unemployment benefits, well, you can't really do much spending, saving with that. So if you now take $400 and you add $1,200 to it, that is a lot of extra money that people have, and they're going to turn this arrow up, which then will turn this arrow up and hopefully keep wages at a place that's comfortable for the economy. During World War II, the US would be at point B. And here we see another image looking at the United States. World War I, the Depression starts to move down. I'm sorry, World War I, here's the 20s section right here. Right, this section. Why am I not following my arrow? This right here, this recovery is caused by credit in the Model T Ford and the ad, that credit. Before you know it, you reach the surplus, the economy starts to tank. The government comes up with the New Deal. It really doesn't work. The economy continues downward, and what saves us from the Depression is actually World War II. Common song during the 20s, Brother Can You Spare a Dime? Notice how here they're talking about, once I built the railroad, I made it run. I built a tower, khaki suits, we fought in World War I, and now I'm just sitting in line waiting for bread. Got nothing, which is what's going to lead to the American people voting in FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, who was the president during the Depression, who comes up with the solution of the New Deal. And his solution was pretty much to get people this arrow turned up. So the New Deal is figure out a way to get Americans jobs so they can spend, save, invest, and hopefully business production, and then the cycle will kind of move up. So I definitely suggest you take a look at the Depression Causes slideshow, screencast. It's give you a lot more examples. It's not just these models. Sorry.